Chapter 2, The Natural State of Things. Robert McKee, story is a metaphor for life, and to be alive is to be in seemingly perpetual conflict. Story. The first great tragedy. Life is nasty, brutish, and short. Thomas Hobbes. First I will state the nature of the true world. In the animal kingdom, predators hunt not out of malice but out of necessity. The will to life is an irrational force driven by their instincts for survival and reproduction, at the expense of others. War of all against all. Thomas Hobbes. Schopenhauer highlights that life thrives on the destruction of other life. The world is a slaughterhouse, and life feeds on life. For any organism to survive, its survival necessitates the suffering of another. Example. A lion eating a gazelle to keep itself alive. There is no morality here, only survival. Even plants participate. Plant, while not predators, must still compete for sunlight, nutrients and water. Competition for resources driven by the innate need to sustain life. Some block out the sun from others, some strangle like kudzu, or English ivy. They also fight under the soil with their roots. Not to mention carnivorous plants, it's the natural outcome of scarcity and self-preservation. Life must prioritize survival over harmony. One's gain is always a necessary loss for another. Arthur. Schopenhauer. To put it bluntly, we live in a world where the organism abuse, kill and consume one another to survive. To exist in this world means suffering, limitations, sickness, and death. This is the natural state of things. Even when you turn to the Bible confirms this. 1 John 5:19 We know that we are children of God, and the whole world is under the control of the evil one. One way we are different from animals is that we can imagine a reality where this isn't the case. Now let's shift towards humans. We are no different. Thomas Hobbes. The world is hell, and men are on the one hand the tormented souls and on the other the devils in it. Egoism is the root of all conflict, and it is an ineradicable element of the human will. Every man has a right to everything, even to one another's body. This unrestrained right causes inevitable clashes. Equality of power. Hobbes notes that all individuals are roughly equal in their ability to harm one another, which leads to mistrust. If any two men desire the same thing, which nevertheless they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies. Hobbes explains that conflict arises from three main causes. Competition, for resources, food, shelter, etc. Diffidence, fear of others attacking first leads to preemptive strikes. Glory, desire for reputation and dominance. In essence, the state of nature fosters a war of all against all, because humans lack a social contract to impose order and cooperation. And to layer that, egoism is unavoidable. Schopenhauer argues that all beings act in their own self-interest, whether consciously or unconsciously. This self-interest inevitably leads to clashes with others pursuing their own interests. Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer's pessimistic philosophy, particularly in works like The World as Will and Representation, views life as driven by an irrational, blind force he calls the will to life, Will zum Leben. This force manifests as endless striving, competition, and conflict. Conflict is the mechanism of nature. Schopenhauer's famous line, "Nature's methods are all cruel, its ends are all selfish," highlights how conflict and suffering are inherent to the natural world. Predation, competition for survival, and even interpersonal struggles are manifestations of the will. While animals act out of instinct, humans amplify conflict because of their capacity for malice, ambition, shared beliefs, pride, which leading to wars, exploitation, and systemic oppression. In Schopenhauer's view, unconflict is more metaphysical, which I cannot ignore, but this expression makes it even more tragic. And this help lean us more into spiritual reasons for conflict at its root and its role in existence. Hermetic principles. The illusion of separation from the one, all is mind, creates duality. Opposites like love and hate, harmony and discord, arise from this division. This duality is the breeding ground for conflict, as the mind identifies with fragmented parts of reality rather than the whole. Suffering results from the resistance to this separation, as humanity longs to reunite with the divine but is trapped in the illusion of individuality. Alchemy. Conflict arises as the soul, symbolized by the prima materia, undergoes the alchemical process of purification. The descent into matter causes the soul to be clouded by impurities, leading to internal and external struggles. Suffering is the fire of transformation, the necessary pain to burn away imperfections and refine the soul back to its divine essence. Gnosticism. Conflict originates from the soul's ignorance of its divine nature, imposed by the demiurge, who governs the material world. The material realm itself is inherently flawed and corrupt, causing suffering. Struggles arise as the divine spark within seeks to escape the ignorance imposed by the physical world and awaken to its true origin. Christianity. Conflict and suffering stem from humanity's separation from God, which began with Adam and Eve's disobedience in the Garden of Eden. By eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they gained consciousness, in particular morality. This original sin was passed down to all humanity, embedding a nature prone to sin. Buddhism. Suffering, dukkha, is inherent to existence because of attachment, desire, and ignorance, key factors that keep beings trapped in the cycle of samsara. Conflict arises from craving tanha and aversion, as individuals compete for impermanent, worldly things. Suffering persists as long as beings fail to understand the Four Noble Truths and remain bound by delusion. Conclusion. The nature of existence, from the natural world to human society, is defined by conflict. In the animal kingdom, survival is driven by the destruction of others, and even plants participate in the struggle for resources. Schopenhauer's philosophy underscores that this conflict is inherent to life itself, driven by the irrational will to life. Humans, like animals, are not immune to this drive and are often propelled by egoism, competition, and fear, which Hobbes identifies as key causes of conflict. The absence of a social contract, in Hobbes' view, leads to a war of all against all. Conflict also has metaphysical dimensions, according to various spiritual and philosophical systems. The Hermetic principle suggests that duality arises from the illusion of separation, creating internal strife. Alchemy, Gnosticism, Christianity, and Buddhism all frame conflict as deeply connected to the human condition, whether through a struggle for purity, escaping ignorance, or overcoming attachment. Together, these perspectives reveal that conflict is not only an inevitable part of life but is woven into the very fabric of existence itself. It shapes human behavior, relationships, and society, whether through primal survival instincts, selfish desires, or spiritual disconnection. Conflict is the force that drives the world forward, ensuring that change, growth, and destruction are constant companions. Understanding this reality is crucial in acknowledging the challenges humanity faces in seeking peace or meaning in an inherently turbulent world. Perception. The second great tragedy. I will use Immanuel Kant and trichromatic theory to prove that what we see and hear are interpretations, and are not how does things are in themselves. To quote Kant himself, what things may be in themselves, I know not, because a thing is never presented to me otherwise than as an appearance. On the path of objective knowledge, we shall never get beyond appearances. We shall therefore remain at the outside of things, we shall never be able to penetrate into their inner nature, and investigate what they are in themselves. Arthur Schopenhauer. The world is will and representation. Man makes himself the center of the world, and considers his own existence and well-being before everything else. In fact, from the natural standpoint, he is ready for this to sacrifice everything else. He is ready to annihilate the world, in order to maintain his own self, that drop in the ocean, a little drop. We can't not imagine things outside of our point of view to stack on top of this. Our egos make us see ourselves as the most important things alive. Sensation. Trichromatic theory explains that humans perceive color through three primary receptors: red, green, and blue. From these, all other visible colors are derived. However, this is only a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. There are colors humans cannot see, just as some animals perceive fewer colors, e.g., rabbits, dogs and cats, or more colors, e.g., mantis shrimp, bees and butterflies. Common sense would say how we see the world is correct. But this isn't the case. Our perception isn't correct, but simply how we are biologically equipped to experience the world. Philosophers have long debated whether colors and sensations are inherent properties of objects or constructs of the mind. Aristotle thought color is a property of the object. In De Anima, on the Soul, Aristotle wrote, "Color is the proper object of sight, it is in the surface of things and has the power to set in motion the transparent medium." In contrast, Galileo believed color isn't a property of an object but a phenomenon of the mind. In the Assayer Il Saggiatore, Galileo Galilei argued, if the living creature were removed, all these qualities, e.g., colors, tastes, smells, would be annihilated and abolished from the universe. Modern science supports Galileo's perspective, showing that color is a subjective experience. For instance, bananas aren't objectively yellow, and the sky isn't inherently blue, those are simply interpretations by our brains. Animals like dogs, cats, and rabbits perceive the world mostly in shades of gray, with some blues and yellows. This subjectivity extends to all our senses. What we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell are personal experiences, shaped by biology and perception. This reinforces the idea that we are fundamentally separated from the world and from each other. If our perceptions and experiences are subjective, how can we truly judge another's beliefs or actions? What we each believe is right may simply be what feels right to us, rather than an objective truth. To see this in practice, watch Be Smart, How Do We See Color, and Veritasium. What do jumping spiders teach us about color? Example. Animals perceive the world in fascinatingly different ways due to their unique sensory adaptations. Snakes use infrared heat sensing pits to detect warm-blooded prey, effectively seeing heat signatures in the dark. Cows and horses have panoramic vision due to eyes on the sides of their heads, allowing them to spot predators but with limited depth perception. They mainly see blue and yellow and are red-green colorblind. Fish. Many have specialized vision for underwater environments, some even seeing polarized light to detect subtle movements. Seeing mostly blues and greens well, while some can see ultraviolet. Birds, pigeons and sparrows possess exceptional color vision, seeing a broader spectrum than humans, including ultraviolet, blues, greens, and reds with more sensitivity. Aiding in navigation and mate selection. Insects, bees and flies see ultraviolet patterns on flowers invisible to humans but can't see red, and flies experience everything in slow motion, perceiving time differently. Rats rely on whiskers and a keen sense of smell to navigate in low light, compensating for poor vision. Frogs detect only moving objects effectively, with a visual system tuned to catch prey like insects. Chameleons see a wide range of colors, including ultraviolet, have independently rotating eyes, allowing them to look in two directions simultaneously for hunting and safety. Bats and dolphins use echolocation, emitting high-frequency sounds and interpreting the echoes to navigate and hunt in complete darkness. These adaptations highlight the diverse ways animals experience their environment, often in ways humans can barely comprehend. Watch Bright Side, How Animals See the World. To conceptualize this abstract view. The same goes for the rest of senses. I choose to focus on sight, because to most people it's the most important sense. But I will still give some examples how this applies to the rest of senses. Humans can only hear sounds within a specific frequency range, typically between 20 Hz Hz and 20,000 Hz, while elephants, moths and owls can hear far more than we can, while naked mole rats and armadillo hear less sounds than us. We can only detect a small range of taste, primarily categorized as sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, savory, with our ability to perceive different flavors largely influenced by our sense of smell as well, meaning some things might taste different to different people due to variations in the taste receptors and smell sensitivity. But there are some animals that can taste better than us. Snakes, lizards and insects can collect more information from tasting the air. Basically teasing air. We can smell a wide range of odors, but can't smell everything. We can't detect pheromones, inert gases, like oxygen, nitrogen, and argon, while many mammals can smell pheromones like dogs can smell more than us. That said, there is no known species that can smell inert gases. And to finish off, the sense of touch, meaning detecting pressure, vibrations, temperature, pain, and texture. We can't feel microscopic textures. Geckos and other animals with fine sensory hairs can detect microscopic details to help them climb or sense vibrations. We can't detect electromagnetic sensations or magnetic forces directly. Sharks, rays, and platypuses can detect electromagnetic fields to sense prey or navigate underwater. Humans can feel vibrations when they're close and strong, but not faint or distant ones. Elephants feel low-frequency seismic vibrations through the ground using their sensitive feet. Mood and sensory perception. Taste. Research has shown that emotions can significantly impact how we perceive flavors. For example, sadness or stress can dull our taste buds, making food taste bland. Conversely, positive emotions can enhance flavors, making sweet foods seem sweeter and savory foods more satisfying. Hearing. Emotional states can affect how we interpret sounds. A neutral sound, like a distant car horn, might seem startling or aggressive when we're anxious, but it may go unnoticed when we're calm. A sound, like a colleague's loud laughter, might seem irritating or offensive to someone already stressed, causing tension. Sight. Emotions influence how we see the world. Bright colors might feel overwhelming in a stressed state, while dull or grayish hues might dominate our perception during sadness. Positive moods often lead to a heightened awareness of vivid, warm, or inviting colors. Mood and time perception. Our mood can distort how we perceive time. Negative moods. Time often feels like it's dragging. This is linked to heightened self-awareness and rumination, where we're more focused on each passing moment. Positive moods. Time may seem to fly by, as we're more absorbed in activities and less focused on monitoring time itself. This also goes for social interaction. Someone might not take offense to something said to them in a good mood, but in a bad mood they will. Also, a person in a good mood may inadvertently dismiss or ignore the needs of someone in a negative mood, causing feelings of neglect or resentment. Example: imagine two people in a car, rain isn't falling and the sun isn't too hot. Person 1 is enjoying the ride and having fun, person 2 is at the edge crying and feels physical ill. The first person wants to reach to their destination and tells person 2 they will be fine, but person 2 is asking to turn back around, they don't want go anymore. These two people can't relate to each other, their mood and feelings are subjective, even though they are both experiencing the same car ride. Their motives, influenced by their mental and physical state, causing conflict. Role of perception in conflict. Subjective experiences, when shared among a group, solidify into collective beliefs, what people come to see as truth. A simple example is pizza. Imagine that when pizza was first invented, its creator tried adding pineapple but disliked it. Maybe they weren't accustomed to mixing fruit with flour-based foods, or perhaps they just didn't like pineapple in general. As pizza gained popularity in their region, this preference became the norm. Pineapple simply wasn't considered a topping. Over time, the idea cemented itself into the culture. People didn't just avoid pineapple on pizza, they never even considered it. If they encountered the idea, they might feel disgusted because it went against everything they had grown up with. Now, contrast this with people from a different culture where mixing sweet and savory was common. They might enjoy fruit on bread, like bananas on toast, and naturally, they'd be open to pineapple on pizza. These two groups, shaped by different subjective experiences, would have opposing views on the matter. Now, imagine two people from these backgrounds trying to order a pizza together, on a date or for a group of children. A seemingly trivial decision could spark tension. Not because either side is inherently wrong, but because their experiences have shaped their tastes, preferences, and even emotional responses to food. This small-scale disagreement reflects a larger pattern in human conflict. When deeply ingrained norms clash, even something as simple as pizza can become a point of division. Other small examples might be eating food with one's hand, the amount of pepper in food, or the importance of breast over butt. What seems harmless at the personal level, pizza toppings become serious when tied to religion, politics, or identity. Deeper implications. Most men don't feel sexual attraction towards other men, because this is their subjective experience, their truth, they assume it's universal or natural. Over generations, heterosexuality became the default expectation in many societies, the social norm. Religion, laws, and cultural values reinforced this assumption. Being gay was stigmatized, punished, or hidden because it didn't fit the experience of the majority. When something contradicts their experience, e.g., seeing two men together, it feels wrong or unnatural to them. People seek stability in their understanding of the world. When something challenges their beliefs or norms, it creates uncertainty and anxiety. Instead of questioning their own views, they often try to reject, remove, change or eliminate the new idea, person or thing to restore a sense of control. Example: gay men and LGBTQ+ activists push for acceptance, e.g., marriage rights, representation in media, education in schools. Some straight people push back, seeing it as an attack on their norms or an attempt to change society. Schools teaching LGBTQ+ topics become a battleground because they challenge the assumption that heterosexuality is the default. But why can't we all live in peace and accept some people like pineapple on pizza? Isn't that what everyone wants? As stated alike before, people seek stability, and when something challenges their beliefs or norms, it creates uncertainty and anxiety, often provoking defensiveness or anger to remove the new threat to restore a sense of control. Tribalism, us versus them mentality. Humans naturally form groups based on shared values, beliefs, and experiences. Any challenge to their group's way of life feels like a threat. People will fight to defend their group's identity, even when no direct harm is being done. Example: a conservative parent sees LGBTQ+ education as the other side, trying to impose values on their children. A gay rights activist sees resistance to education as oppression and ignorance. Even if neither side is actually being harmed, both perceive the other as a threat to their group's way of life. The illusion of objectivity. Conservatives believe their traditional view of gender and sexuality is natural and self-evident. Progressives believe inclusivity and gender fluidity are self-evident truths that should be universally accepted. Neither side acknowledges that their views are shaped by subjective experience, they assume the other side is simply wrong. People believe their experiences are the most logical, natural, or correct. They assume if others just understood the world as they do, they would agree. When people don't agree, instead of questioning their own views, they see others as wrong, ignorant, or dangerous. Example. A religious believer sees their faith as absolute truth and can't comprehend why an atheist chooses not to believe. A straight man who has never experienced same-sex attraction believes it's unnatural. A gay person sees heterosexual norms as outdated and oppressive. Neither fully understands the other's experience, but both assume they are right. Fear of change and loss. People often fight not just for what they believe, but for what they stand to lose. Cultural shifts feel like personal losses of power, identity, traditions, or meaning. When change happens too fast, people panic and push back aggressively. Example. As LGBTQ+ rights expand, some people fear losing traditional gender roles, family values, or religious influence in society. As science challenges religious beliefs, some believers fear losing purpose, moral structure, or community. Conflict is a tool for power. Politicians, media, and corporations fuel the divide for profit and control. Religious leaders use fear of LGBTQ+, corruption, to strengthen their influence. Activists sometimes use outrage to gain power and recognition. Instead of fostering understanding, both sides get manipulated into deeper conflict. Example. A politician frames LGBTQ+ education as an attack on children to gain conservative votes. An activist frames religious parents as hateful bigots to gain social media traction. Both are using fear to mobilize their base. Conclusion. Why do people fight? People don't fight because of logic, they fight because of fear, identity, and control. Conflict arises when people feel threatened, personally, culturally, or existentially. Even small disagreements like pizza toppings tap into deeper fears of difference, rejection, or loss. The more attached someone is to their beliefs, the harder they will fight when those beliefs are challenged. Conclusion. Our perception of the world is shaped by subjective experiences, including sensory limitations and emotional states. From the way we see colors to how our mood affects time perception, our senses provide only an approximation of reality, filtered through personal biases. This disconnect between subjective perception and objective reality can lead to misunderstandings and can cause conflict themselves. Since everyone experiences the world differently, conflicts often arise from these differing perceptions. The evolutionary origins of beliefs. From the very beginning of human existence, beliefs were not just abstract ideas but vital tools for survival. Early humans, like our caveman ancestors, needed to make quick decisions based on limited information. In this context, beliefs were formed out of necessity to make sense of the world around them and ensure their survival. For example, if early humans believed that predators were lurking in certain areas, they would avoid those places, forming a survival belief rooted in caution. This type of belief, driven by immediate environmental factors, helped early humans navigate dangers, secure food, and build a cohesive social group. But these survival beliefs didn't just relate to the physical world, they were also essential for social cohesion. The formation of group identities and the belief in shared social rules helped early humans bond and collaborate. Early human groups needed to function together in order to survive. Beliefs about cooperation, trust, and loyalty were vital for maintaining harmony and avoiding internal conflict within the group. The development of identity and group beliefs. As humans evolved and formed more complex societies, their beliefs began to include deeper aspects of identity: who they were as individuals and as part of a group. Early humans likely began to believe in certain group myths, such as shared rituals, customs, and codes of conduct, which helped them navigate social interactions and reinforce their place within the tribe. For example, a belief in a shared origin story or the importance of certain actions like hunting or defending the group created a collective sense of purpose. This shared belief system helped individuals feel connected to the larger group, shaping their sense of identity and reinforcing group cohesion. These beliefs about identity were critical for survival in early human societies. The belief that the group's survival depended on cooperation, loyalty, and shared goals became a guiding principle. This early form of identity and belief system wasn't just about individual preferences, it was about group survival. The role of fear in survival in belief formation. Fear, too, played a huge role in shaping early human beliefs. Humans, driven by a biological need for safety, developed beliefs around what was safe and dangerous, often based on emotional reactions to the world around them. Early humans learned quickly to fear dangerous animals, environmental threats, and anything that could potentially harm them or their group. These survival-based fears led to the formation of beliefs about the world that, over time, became ingrained in the human psyche. For example, if a belief arose that a certain type of terrain was dangerous, that belief would be reinforced over generations, even if the specific danger, such as a predator, was no longer present. Fear-based beliefs, then, became part of the foundational mental frameworks that influenced how people saw the world. As humans began to live in larger groups, these beliefs didn't just help with personal survival but also group survival. The group's shared fear and caution would reinforce social rules, making it easier for the group to survive together. The legacy of evolutionary beliefs in modern identities. Today, these deep-rooted beliefs about survival, identity, and social cohesion still influence how we interact with the world. Our brains still carry the legacy of evolutionary survival instincts, often influencing how we form beliefs about self-worth, relationships, and the world around us. For instance, the belief that our group's survival depends on cooperation and loyalty still manifests today in societal values like trust and belonging. Our beliefs about success, failure, and safety stem from these primal instincts, even though the immediate dangers that shape them may no longer exist. The fundamental structures of fear-based beliefs and identity still guide our thoughts, even in modern contexts. Moreover, these survival-driven beliefs are still shaped by our sense of self, which originates from the same survival mechanisms. Early humans learned to define themselves in relation to their tribe or group, and that basic mechanism remains intact. Beliefs about personal self-worth, accomplishments, and place within society are rooted in the same principles of survival, even though we no longer face the same physical threats as our ancestors. Subjectivity of beliefs. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then, real, is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Morpheus, the Matrix. Our ability to engage with the world through our senses is inherently limited. Every perception, thought, and interpretation is shaped by subjective filters, our culture, past experiences, and societal context. This means that what we believe to be objective truth is actually influenced by these frameworks, making it a distorted version of reality. Subjective sensation greater than. False perception greater than false beliefs. Subjective sensation. Sensory input is inherently subjective and influenced by biases, context, and individual differences, e.g., hearing a sound differently based on mood or expectations. This sets the stage for errors in processing. False perception. Sensations are processed into perceptions, but these interpretations may be flawed due to cognitive distortions, incomplete data, or pre-existing biases. False beliefs. Developing conclusions or assumptions that are inaccurate but feel subjectively true, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Examples. False sensation. Feeling ignored at a social gathering triggers a physical sensation of tightness in the chest. False perception. Everyone is avoiding me because they think I'm unworthy. False belief. I'm not likable, and no one will ever truly care about me. This belief can lead to social withdrawal and reinforce feelings of isolation, even though the initial sensation and perception were subjective distortions. Example. A person raised in a household that emphasizes hard work and financial success might internalize the belief that their worth is tied to their career achievements. If they struggle to secure a high-paying job or experience a career setback, they may feel like a failure. Internally, this belief can lead to self-doubt, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy. Interpersonally, it might strain relationships with family members who, intentionally or not, reinforce the pressure by expressing disappointment or offering unsolicited advice. The person might withdraw or become defensive, further deepening the divide and fueling the cycle of inner and outer conflict. Carl Rogers' self-concept theory further illustrates this. He proposed that a large gap between the ideal self, who we aspire to be, and the perceived self, who we believe we are, creates tension, or incongruence. This emotional distress stems from the disparity between what is and what isn't. The evolutionary origins of core beliefs, rules, and assumptions. As stated before, from the very beginning of human existence, beliefs were not abstract ideas but vital tools for survival. Early humans, like our caveman ancestors, formed beliefs as a way to navigate a dangerous and unpredictable world. Over time, these beliefs became structured into core beliefs, rules, and assumptions that continue to influence how we think and act today. Myths and religions emerged as extensions of these systems, helping to explain the unknown and providing guidance for behavior. The evolutionary basis for core beliefs. Core beliefs are deeply ingrained assumptions about ourselves, others, and the world, shaped by our evolutionary history. In early human societies, survival necessity. Early humans needed to make quick decisions to avoid danger. Core beliefs, such as, the world is dangerous, or, I must stay alert to survive, were formed to ensure safety. Example, believing that predators lurk in the dark would keep early humans cautious and alive. Social cohesion. Core beliefs about trust, cooperation, and loyalty were essential for group survival. A shared belief in fairness or the importance of helping others strengthened bonds and increased group success. Example, believing, I can trust my group, encouraged collaboration in hunting or defense. Even today, core beliefs reflect these survival mechanisms. A person's belief that, I must work hard to be valued, or, I am not good enough, might stem from the same need to maintain social belonging and avoid rejection. The development of rules and assumptions. Rules and assumptions evolved as mental shortcuts to simplify decision-making and ensure predictability in a complex world. Rules. These are internal guidelines for how to behave, often influenced by cultural or social expectations. For early humans, rules like, stick together to stay safe, or, obey the leader, ensured group stability and survival. Modern example, always be polite to strangers, or, never show weakness, are modern echoes of these survival-based rules. Assumptions. These are beliefs about how the world works, often formed through repeated experiences. Early humans assumed that fire would burn, predators would attack, and certain plants were poisonous. These assumptions helped them navigate their environment efficiently. Modern example, assumptions like, authority figures know best, or, success leads to happiness, guide behavior today, even if they're not universally true. Conclusion. The evolutionary origins of beliefs demonstrate their foundational role in shaping human behavior and societal structures. From survival instincts to social cohesion, beliefs have historically functioned as tools for navigating the environment and maintaining group stability. These primal mechanisms, however, have left a lasting legacy that influences modern identity, fears, and perceptions. In the context of conflict, these evolutionary roots provide insight into why disagreements arise. Beliefs shaped by subjective perceptions and survival instincts often lead to misinterpretations or false assumptions about others. For instance, fear-driven beliefs can escalate tensions when one group perceives another as a threat, even without objective evidence. Similarly, deeply ingrained core beliefs about identity or worth can create internal and interpersonal struggles, as individuals wrestle with societal pressures or conflicting values. The role of shoulds in belief systems. Shoulds are prescriptive beliefs about how we, others, or the world ought to be. They arise from the combination of core beliefs, rules, and assumptions, serving as motivational drivers. Evolutionary roots. In early societies, shoulds reinforced behaviors necessary for survival and group harmony. Example, I should protect my tribe, or, I should obey my elders, ensured that individuals contributed to the group's well-being. Modern context. These survival-driven shoulds persist today in beliefs like, I should be successful, or, I should always help others. While they can motivate, they also create stress when unmet. Myths and religions. The collective framework of belief. Myths and religions emerged as extensions of early belief systems, serving to explain the unknown, unify groups, and establish shared values. Explanation of the unknown. Early humans faced countless mysteries, lightning, death, the seasons, and created myths to make sense of them. Example, myths about gods controlling nature, like Zeus with thunder, provided comfort and a sense of control over chaotic forces. Social cohesion. Religions codified shared values and rules, fostering cooperation and reducing conflict. Example, beliefs in divine punishment for wrongdoing, e.g., karma or sin, encouraged ethical behavior. Guidance for behavior. Myths often included moral lessons or rules that shaped behavior. Example, stories about heroes or moral struggles taught early humans about courage, sacrifice, and the consequences of betrayal. Even today, myths and religions influence our worldviews, shaping core beliefs about right and wrong, purpose, and identity. How evolutionary beliefs influence core beliefs, rules, and assumptions today. The beliefs that once helped early humans survive continue to shape modern identities and behaviors. Core beliefs. These reflect primal survival instincts. For example, I must achieve to be valued, may stem from the ancient need to prove worth to the group. Rules and assumptions. These simplify our understanding of the world but can limit flexibility. For example, the rule, I should never ask for help, might once have prevented showing weakness to rivals but now hinders collaboration. Shoulds. These create pressure to meet societal or personal expectations, often rooted in evolutionary needs for acceptance and belonging. Example, I should always succeed, reflects the ancient drive to secure status and resources. The legacy of myths and religions in modern society. While we live in a world shaped by science and technology, the psychological need for meaning, identity, and belonging remains. Myths and religions continue to influence belief systems. Moral frameworks. Even secular societies draw on religious ethics, such as the importance of kindness or justice. Shared narratives. Modern myths, e.g., the American Dream, or superhero stories provide a sense of purpose and aspiration, much like ancient myths did. Community and identity. Religions and shared belief systems offer a sense of belonging and connection, echoing the tribal bonds of early humans. The illusion of objectivity. Internal conflict also arises from the false dichotomy between what is and what should be. These shoulds are shaped by subjective beliefs and ideas rooted in cultural, familial, or religious frameworks. While these constructs can guide behavior, they are not objective truths. The resulting clash between perceived reality and actual reality is a significant source of inner tension. This comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, particularly the idea of cognitive distortions. One common cognitive distortion identified in CBT is should statements. These are unrealistic or rigid expectations we place on ourselves or others, and they often lead to feelings of frustration, guilt, anxiety, or inadequacy when they are not met. In CBT, should statements are considered a maladaptive thought pattern because they create internal conflict. The key idea is that these shoulds aren't necessarily grounded in reality or objective truth, and they often set us up for disappointment or negative emotions. The goal in CBT is to challenge and reframe these thoughts to more realistic, flexible, and compassionate ways of thinking. Here's a list of shoulds. I should always be successful. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy when faced with failure or setbacks. I should never make mistakes. This creates an unrealistic expectation of perfection and can breed guilt and self-criticism. I should always be happy. Expecting constant happiness ignores the natural ebb and flow of human emotion, leading to frustration when feeling sad or anxious. I should always be strong. This expectation can suppress vulnerability, preventing emotional expression and leading to isolation. I should always be in control. Life is unpredictable, and this should can result in feelings of anxiety when things are beyond our control. I should always be productive. This idea can create burnout and a sense of worthlessness when rest or leisure is needed. I should meet everyone's expectations. Trying to satisfy others constantly can lead to burnout and a loss of personal identity. I should always be self-sufficient. This belief can lead to isolation and difficulty in asking for help, even when it's necessary. I should always be liked by others. This creates insecurity and the pressure to people please, often at the expense of authenticity. I should never experience negative emotions. Avoiding feelings like anger, sadness, or fear can make those emotions more overwhelming when they arise. I should always be the best version of myself. This can lead to self-criticism and an inability to accept one's flaws or limitations. I should always follow tradition. This can lead to inner conflict if personal values or desires don't align with cultural or familial expectations. I should always help others before helping myself. This can lead to burnout and resentment when personal needs are consistently overlooked. I should never be selfish. This creates internal conflict when self-care or personal desires are perceived as wrong or selfish. I should be constantly busy or engaged. This expectation can lead to stress and guilt when downtime is needed for recovery. I should always understand everything. Trying to have control over every aspect of life can cause frustration and confusion when things are unknown or unclear. Example: Freud's psychoanalytic theory provides one lens to explore this. In his framework, the ego mediates between the id primal desires and the superego moral ideals. This dynamic demonstrates how our perception of right and wrong, shaped by subjective beliefs, often leads to inner conflict. While Freud's theory is not universally accepted, it highlights the complexity of internal struggles driven by culturally and personally constructed ideals. Projecting our beliefs and worldview onto others. Our core beliefs, rules, and assumptions, shaped by our upbringing, culture, experiences, and societal influences, are not confined to our own minds. We often project them onto others, expecting them to align with our own worldview. These projections can cause significant interpersonal conflict because we assume that others share the same beliefs, priorities, and shoulds that we do. When their actions or perspectives don't match our projections, it creates tension, misunderstanding, and judgment. The projection of shoulds onto others. For instance, someone who believes they should always be successful might project this belief onto others. They may expect their colleagues, friends, or family members to also prioritize success above all else. When others fail to meet these expectations, they may feel disappointed, frustrated, or even angry. The person projecting this belief may judge others as lazy or incompetent without considering that each individual has their own set of values and circumstances. Similarly, if someone holds the belief that everyone should be happy all the time, they may project this expectation onto others and become uncomfortable, impatient, or dismissive when people around them express sadness or frustration. This projection leads to misunderstanding because they fail to accept that others' emotions are valid and that everyone experiences a range of feelings. How projection shapes interpersonal conflict. This projection of subjective beliefs creates a filter through which we interpret others' actions. If we believe we should always be in control, for example, we might project that expectation onto those around us, becoming upset when someone else takes control or acts independently. This belief might lead to frustration or even resentment because we are unknowingly imposing our rules on others. Additionally, when people don't live up to our projections, when they don't follow our shoulds, or adhere to our worldview, it can cause resentment, defensiveness, and even alienation. We might feel disrespected, misunderstood, or threatened by others who don't share the same beliefs or values. This conflict is often unconscious, meaning we don't realize we're projecting our own internal beliefs onto others, which makes it harder to resolve the tension. Projecting core beliefs and expectations onto relationships. We project these beliefs and expectations into our relationships, and the results can be particularly damaging. If someone believes they should always put others before themselves, they might project this belief onto their friends or romantic partners, assuming that they, too, should prioritize others' needs over their own. When others don't meet this expectation, the person may feel resentful, abandoned, or unappreciated, even though the other person simply has a different approach to relationships. Likewise, if someone believes they should never make mistakes, they may project this onto others and become overly critical or unforgiving when mistakes are made. This projection can create emotional distance or even hostility, as the person who projects feels disappointed or betrayed when others don't live up to their impossible standards. The cycle of projecting and conflict. When we project our beliefs onto others, it can create a feedback loop. Our judgments lead to conflict, which reinforces our internal beliefs about others and the world. For example, if we project the belief that people should always be successful and react with judgment when they're not, this can create resentment. In turn, this negative response might reinforce our belief that others are lazy or incapable, further escalating the cycle of projection and conflict. If you like myself struggle to understand this, simply imagine the superego is inherently projective. This offers a useful lens to examine how projection works. The superego moral ideals and beliefs constantly strives for perfection, pushing us to adhere to certain rules and standards. But when these ideals are projected onto others, they create tension. For example, if we feel that we should always be successful, we might unconsciously expect others to act in accordance with this belief, creating frustration when they don't. This projection of the superego onto others can amplify interpersonal conflicts because we expect others to meet standards that we ourselves struggle to uphold. Conclusion. Shoulds, an internal conflict. Shoulds establish rigid expectations that clash with reality, leading to guilt, frustration, or anxiety. Their roots in survival and societal structures show how deeply ingrained they are, yet their persistence in modern times often causes unnecessary internal strife. When these expectations are challenged or unmet, individuals experience cognitive dissonance, driving internal conflict. Myths, religions, and group dynamics. Myths and religions foster shared values, but they also impose collective shoulds that shape moral frameworks and identity. This universal framework can unify or alienate, depending on an individual's alignment with the group's beliefs. Misalignment can cause inner turmoil or conflict within communities. Projections and interpersonal conflict. Projecting our beliefs and shoulds onto others assumes a shared worldview that does not exist. These assumptions lead to disappointment, frustration, and resentment when others fail to meet our expectations, fueling misunderstandings and strained relationships. Factors that shape perception. Of course we don't just come up with all our beliefs for ourselves, or is it isolated? Family, culture, education systems also influenced and imposes beliefs and perceptives on individuals. Social conditioning. Family dynamics. How we are raised, including values, discipline styles, and emotional support, affects how we interpret the world. Peer influence. The need for acceptance or validation can lead to adopting shared beliefs or behaviors, even if they contradict personal experiences. Media exposure. Social media, news outlets, movies, and advertisements often shape our understanding of beauty, success, and morality. You should conform to societal norms to fit in and gain acceptance. You should prioritize the values and expectations of your family or peers. You should believe that the dominant narrative is the correct or only perspective. Cultural beliefs. Norms and traditions. Cultural rituals and practices influence how we interpret behavior and events. For example, loud celebrations might signify joy in one culture but seem excessive or rude in another. Language. The words available in a language shape how concepts are understood. For instance, some languages have unique terms for emotions or experiences that others lack. Historical narratives. A culture's shared history often creates collective beliefs, such as national pride or resentment toward specific groups. You should follow traditions and practices without questioning their origins. You should view your culture as superior or the most normal compared to others. You should accept the moral and social codes dictated by your community. Religion and spirituality. Moral frameworks. Religious teachings often dictate what is considered right or wrong, influencing decisions and judgments. Worldview. Beliefs about creation, the afterlife, or divine intervention can shape how individuals interpret events or tragedies. Community influence. Religious groups often reinforce shared values, shaping collective perceptions of social issues. You should trust in the teachings and authority of religious texts or leaders. You should act according to religious doctrines to achieve spiritual rewards or avoid punishment. You should perceive those outside your faith as misguided or morally wrong. Educational systems. Curriculum design. What is taught or omitted in schools influences how individuals perceive history, science, and society. Authority figures. Teachers, professors, and mentors play a significant role in shaping intellectual and moral perspectives. Access to knowledge. Limited access to diverse viewpoints can create a narrow perception of reality. You should learn what is taught in school as objective truth. You should follow authority figures, e.g., teachers, as sources of knowledge and guidance. You should compete with others academically to prove your worth and ability. Economic factors. Wealth disparities. Socioeconomic status can shape how people perceive opportunity, fairness, and personal agency. Consumer culture. Advertising promotes materialism, often skewing perceptions of happiness and success. Work environment. Jobs with high stress or poor conditions can influence how people perceive time, relationships, and self-worth. You should measure success in terms of material wealth and possessions. You should strive to achieve upward mobility, even at personal or ethical costs. You should accept inequality as a natural or inevitable part of life. Political systems and ideologies. Propaganda. Governments and political parties often shape perceptions through controlled messaging or biased media. National identity. Patriotism and nationalism can skew perceptions of other countries or cultures. Public policy. Laws and policies reflect societal values, reinforcing perceptions of justice, equity, and morality. You should align with a specific political ideology to belong to a group. You should trust the government or political leaders to define what is right or wrong. You should support policies that prioritize your nation or group over others. Group identity. In-group versus out-group dynamics. Loyalty to one's group, e.g., ethnicity, profession, or ideology, can skew perceptions of outsiders. Social roles. Expectations tied to gender, age, or profession shape how individuals see themselves and others. Stereotypes. Preconceived notions about groups influence how we perceive their behavior or intentions. You should defend the values and beliefs of your in-group, even when they are flawed. You should perceive outsiders as threats or rivals to your group's interests. You should adopt behaviors and views that align with your social role or identity. Conclusion. Social conditioning influences beliefs, values, and perceptions through family, culture, religion, education, economics, politics, and group identity. These imposed norms often clash, leading to misunderstandings and conflict. For example, cultural traditions, religious doctrines, or political ideologies can create, us versus them, dynamics, while economic disparities and group identities deepen divides. The illusion of objectivity causes individuals to defend their conditioned beliefs as absolute truths, ignoring others' perspectives. Recognizing the role of conditioning can foster empathy, challenge biases, and reduce conflict. Overall conclusion. John Truby, great storytelling isn't just conflict between characters. It's between characters and their values. The anatomy of story. Our subjective perception of reality, shaped by sensory limitations, emotional states, and biological constraints, creates a distorted view of the world. This disconnect between subjective experience and objective reality fosters misunderstandings, as individuals operate from different interpretations of the same events. Misaligned perceptions lead to conflict when personal biases, emotions, or cultural conditioning are mistaken for universal truths. Moreover, beliefs and values derived from evolutionary survival instincts or societal conditioning further exacerbate these divides. Fear, egoism, and attachment to identity fuel internal and external struggles, while rigid, shoulds, and projections impose unrealistic expectations on others, causing disappointment and resentment. Cognitive revolution. The third great tragedy, as introduced by Yuval Noah Harari. The cognitive revolution marks a pivotal point in human evolution, where our ancestors developed the capacity for abstract thought, complex language, and the creation of beliefs and ideologies. This shift, occurring roughly 70,000 years ago, is what separated humanity from the rest of the animal kingdom, granting us immense advantages but also introducing unique forms of conflict and suffering. Breaking away from instinct. Unlike animals that primarily rely on instincts to survive, humans began to override these primal drives with conscious thought and decision-making. This newfound cognitive flexibility allowed us to adapt to diverse environments, form social bonds beyond immediate kin, and collaborate on an unprecedented scale. However, this departure from instinct introduced uncertainty, doubt, fear, and internal conflict. While an animal acts based on innate patterns, humans are burdened with choices that require deliberation and often conflict with one another. For instance, instincts may urge survival at all costs, but human ideologies, such as self-sacrifice for the greater good, or fasting for spiritual and religious reasons, can override these instincts. This tension between instinct and belief becomes a source of internal and societal strife. The birth of beliefs and ideologies. The ability to conceptualize abstract ideas allowed humans to create shared narratives, ranging from religious myths to societal norms. These narratives unified groups, enabling cooperation among large numbers of individuals. The cost, however, was the emergence of ideological conflict. Beliefs as a source of unity and division. While shared beliefs bind groups together, they also create divisions between those with differing ideologies. For example, religious doctrines or political systems often clash, as each group perceives their belief system as the truth. This clash fuels interpersonal and group conflicts, sometimes escalating to violence. Example: religious might teach self-denial is good, abstaining from sex or embracing selflessness makes you a better person and gets you closer to God. Some might see this as a disagree with this, claiming it's stripping them from living life fully and telling people not to look out for themselves as harmful to individuals. Abstract thinking. The power of flexibility in problem solving. Complex problem solving. Abstract thinking allows humans to step back from immediate, concrete situations and think about them from a more general or conceptual perspective. This ability to think abstractly helps us solve complex problems, understand patterns, and create strategies that aren't immediately obvious. Evolutionary advantage. Abstract thinking allowed early humans to plan ahead, use tools, navigate complex social structures, and create strategies for survival. For example, being able to imagine what might happen in the future, such as how weather patterns would affect hunting or gathering, was essential for survival. Social and moral reasoning. Humans are unique in their ability to think abstractly about morality, justice, and social roles. Abstract thinking allows us to reflect on social norms, laws, and fairness beyond immediate interactions. It helps us understand that others have feelings, thoughts, and perspectives that may differ from our own. Evolutionary advantage. In social groups, abstract thinking about fairness, reciprocity, and future consequences strengthens cooperation. It allowed humans to live in larger, more complex social groups by understanding concepts like social justice and fairness, which promotes peaceful coexistence and collaboration. Innovation and creativity. Abstract thinking fuels creativity, allowing humans to imagine new possibilities, invent tools, create art, and develop technology. It enables us to go beyond the immediate and tangible world to conceptualize abstract ideas like time, space, and even the future. Evolutionary advantage. Creativity and innovation allowed humans to develop new tools, solve problems in novel ways, and adapt to changing environments, which played a major role in our evolutionary success. Connection between identity and abstract thinking. Creating meaning. Both identity and abstract thinking are involved in the process of meaning making. We use abstract thinking to interpret our experiences, form beliefs, and shape our identity. Example: someone who identifies as an environmental activist may abstractly think about the broader ecological impact of their actions, which guides their identity and the decisions they make. Navigating conflict. Both identity and abstract thinking help us navigate conflict. While identity gives us a sense of self and belonging, abstract thinking enables us to consider different perspectives and imagine alternative outcomes. Example: a person may identify with a political party, but abstract thinking allows them to reflect on the bigger picture and potentially re-evaluate their stance during a political conflict. Internal conflict and cognitive dissonance. The complexity of human thought also led to the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding two conflicting beliefs or when actions contradict values. For instance, someone who values honesty may lie to protect a loved one, creating inner turmoil. Animals will never have this problem. Cognitive distortions. The flaws in our perception. The cognitive revolution not only equipped humans with advanced reasoning and problem-solving skills but also left us vulnerable to cognitive distortions, systematic errors in thinking that skew our perception of reality. These distortions often arise as coping mechanisms to deal with the complexity of human thought, but they also amplify conflict. Examples of distortions. Catastrophizing. Assuming the worst possible outcome, leading to unnecessary stress or conflict. Evolutionary catastrophizing and overgeneralization heighten survival chances, fight or flight, by preparing individuals for the worst-case scenario. For example, assuming a rustle in the bushes was a predator rather than the wind would favor survival, even if it resulted in false alarms. Black and white thinking. Viewing situations or people in absolutes, which fuels ideological polarization. Confirmation bias. Interpreting information in ways that reinforce pre-existing beliefs, creating echo chambers. Evolutionarily, sticking to the beliefs of the group helped maintain cohesion and reduce the risk of being ostracized. Mental filterers. Jumping to conclusions, personalization, blaming, labeling, emotional reasoning, control fallacy, fallacy of fairness, etc. Cognitive distortions are a byproduct of our need to simplify the overwhelming complexity of the world. While they help us navigate life, they often distort reality, fueling internal and interpersonal conflicts. Identity. The self is a construct. The cognitive revolution also brought about the concept of identity, the way we perceive and define ourselves. Unlike animals, humans have the ability to self-reflect, leading to questions like, who am I? And, what is my purpose? The fragility of identity. Identity is not fixed. It is a construct shaped by cultural, societal, and personal experiences. This malleability can lead to inner conflict when external influences challenge our self-concept. Example: a person raised with rigid cultural values may struggle with their identity when exposed to conflicting ideologies, creating tension between their perceived and ideal selves. Identity and conflict. The human need to define ourselves often leads to clashes with others whose identities differ. Whether these differences are based on nationality, religion, or personal values, they are a major driver of interpersonal and group conflict. In-group, out-group. The concept of in-group and out-group is deeply tied to identity, as it allows individuals to define who they are by distinguishing themselves from others. This division creates a sense of belonging and solidarity within a group, strengthening cooperation and shared purpose. Drawing a line between us and them was crucial for early human survival, as it helped prioritize resources, safety, and trust within one's group. For example, cultural or national identities often rely on such distinctions, using shared language, customs, and values to unify members while creating a clear boundary from outsiders. This line, while essential for group cohesion, also fosters exclusion and conflict. Why is a sense of identity important? Sorry for the exhausted list on this topic, but I for myself struggle in understanding this topic. A sense of identity is fundamental to human experience because it shapes how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we navigate the world. Here's why it's so important. Provides stability and self-understanding. What it does. Identity gives you a framework to understand who you are, your values, beliefs, likes, dislikes, and goals. It acts as an internal compass that helps you make decisions and understand your place in the world. Example. Knowing you value honesty helps guide your actions, such as telling the truth even in difficult situations. Why it's important. Without a sense of identity, you might feel lost or directionless, unsure of what matters to you or how to act in different situations. Builds confidence and self-worth. What it does. When you have a clear sense of identity, you feel more grounded and confident in your abilities, beliefs, and choices. It's easier to trust yourself and your decisions. Example. If you identify as creative, you're more likely to pursue opportunities in art or innovation, boosting your sense of purpose and accomplishment. Why it's important. Without identity, you might constantly seek external validation or approval, feeling uncertain about your worth. Helps you navigate relationships. What it does. Your identity influences how you connect with others. It helps you find people who share your values or interests, building stronger, more meaningful relationships. Example. If you identify as someone who values kindness, you're more likely to seek out friends or partners who share that quality. Why it's important. Without a sense of identity, you might struggle to form authentic connections, often conforming to others' expectations rather than being true to yourself. Guides behavior and decision-making. What it does. Identity acts like a filter for choices. It helps you decide what aligns with your beliefs and what doesn't. Example. If your identity includes being environmentally conscious, you're more likely to recycle or support sustainable practices. Why it's important. Without a sense of identity, decisions can feel overwhelming or arbitrary because you don't have a clear set of guiding principles. Provides a sense of belonging. What it does. Identity ties you to communities, cultures, and groups. It helps you feel like you're part of something larger than yourself. Example. Someone who identifies as a musician might feel connected to a global community of artists, even if they've never met them. Why it's important. Without identity, you might feel isolated or alienated, lacking a sense of connection to others or the world. Fosters resilience in adversity. What it does. A strong sense of identity helps you stay grounded during challenges. It reminds you of your strengths, values, and purpose. Example. If you see yourself as a fighter, you're more likely to persevere during hard times rather than give up. Why it's important. Without identity, struggles can feel like they define you, leading to feelings of helplessness or defeat. Psychological stability. Identity provides psychological stability and helps individuals make sense of their lives. By having a clear sense of self, who we are and what we value, we can navigate life's challenges more effectively. It gives us a sense of purpose and direction. Evolutionary advantage. A stable identity allows individuals to focus on long-term goals such as raising children, contributing to the community, or achieving personal success rather than being overwhelmed by uncertainty about who they are. The consequences of lacking identity. When someone lacks a sense of identity, they might feel directionless, unsure of what they want or value. They will struggle with self-esteem, doubting their worth or capabilities, conform to others, prioritizing others' expectations over their own needs, and experience existential confusion, wondering about their purpose or significance. Existential meaning. The burden of awareness. The ability to think abstractly also gave rise to existential questions. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? These questions are uniquely human, as animals operate purely on instinct without pondering their existence. Existential anxiety. Awareness of mortality and the search for meaning can lead to profound internal conflict. This burden of awareness often drives people to create or adopt ideologies to fill the void left by uncertainty. Example. religion, philosophy, and art all stem from the human desire to make sense of existence, but they can also become sources of conflict when ideologies clash. Evolutionary function. Developing beliefs about purpose and meaning encouraged persistence in the face of adversity. For instance, believing in an afterlife or a higher purpose could help early humans endure suffering and loss. Modern conflict. The search for meaning can lead to ideological clashes when individuals or groups impose their beliefs on others. Example: religious crusades or philosophical debates over existentialism versus nihilism illustrate how this search for meaning can spark conflict. The paradox of meaning. While searching for meaning brings a sense of purpose, it also creates suffering when answers are elusive. Existential questions often remain unresolved, leaving individuals to grapple with a sense of futility or despair. Separation from the animal kingdom. The cognitive revolution elevated humans above other species in terms of innovation, but it also deepened our alienation from the natural world and each other. What we gained: the ability to imagine the future, solve complex problems, and build civilizations. Art, science, and philosophy as expressions of our abstract thinking. A sense of purpose derived from shared beliefs and cultural frameworks. What we lost: a direct connection to our environment, as instincts were replaced with reason. The simplicity of existence, as our minds became preoccupied with abstract concerns like identity, morality, and existential meaning. Unity with the natural order, as humans increasingly sought to dominate rather than coexist with it. Conflict is a byproduct of cognition. The cognitive revolution not only gave rise to belief and ideology but also to the conflicts they inevitably bring. Humans now struggle with interpersonal conflict, rooted in differing perspectives and values. Internal conflict, as instincts clash with reason or beliefs. Existential conflict, questions of purpose and meaning that animals, driven purely by instinct, never face. Morality. Imagine a young hunter. He kills a rabbit. While traveling back home, he sees a starving stranger and decides to feed the rabbit to him. Later, he asks himself, if it weren't for me, the rabbit wouldn't have died. Why did I help that stranger but kill the rabbit? Why did I choose to take one life and save another? Why do I feel guilt for one but nothing for the other? This scenario, inspired by Kino's journey, highlights a deeper truth: morality is fluid. It is often driven by pragmatism, not absolute principles. Self-interest and utility. The stranger, unlike the rabbit, can provide future benefits: companionship, skills, protection. We subconsciously prioritize what helps us survive. Empathy and cognitive bias. We recognize human suffering more vividly because we relate to it. The rabbit's suffering is easier to ignore or justify. Charity is not for the sake of others. Since the dawn of human civilization, we've sought to influence others' behavior to ensure our survival and well-being. Early humans recognized that selfishness posed a threat to group harmony. If one person acted solely in their own interest, it could lead to resource hoarding, harm, or distrust. To counteract this, humans created systems like stories, religions, and governments to instill moral codes that benefited collective survival. What we call good often aligns with behaviors that minimize distress, harm, or inconvenience to ourselves and others. For instance, selflessness, encouraged because it strengthens community bonds. Honesty, valued because it builds trust necessary for cooperation. The role of disappointment and hatred. When someone behaves in a way that contradicts our beliefs or values, we often feel disappointed or resentful. This response arises because we perceive their actions as threatening our vision of the world or the order we deem necessary. We see them as failures or dangers to the development of the world. Example: an artist may criticize the current state of art, describing it as watered down and meaningless. Disappointed and resentful, they might see the majority as mindless sheep who fail to grasp the essence of true art, believing the masses need to wake up. Conversely, a religious person might perceive the artist's work as immoral and decadent, viewing it as sinful and corrupt. This leads the religious person to feel disappointment and resentment toward the artist. Both are responding to their own moral frameworks, each convinced of their righteousness while dismissing the other's perspective. This highlights how morality is deeply subjective, shaped by personal values, cultural influences, and experiences. Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes argued in Leviathan that morality originates from humanity's fear of conflict and chaos. To escape the state of nature, where life is nasty, brutish, and short, people agreed to social contracts, relinquishing some freedoms in exchange for security and cooperation. Thus, morality became a tool to manage fear and maintain order. Arthur Schopenhauer, on the other hand, saw morality as rooted in empathy and the recognition of shared suffering. In The World as Will and Representation, he described human behavior as driven by the will to live, which creates conflict as individuals compete for survival. However, morality arises when we transcend selfish desires and recognize the pain of others as our own. Friedrich Nietzsche, in contrast, critiqued morality as a construct imposed by the weak to suppress the strong. On the Genealogy of Morality, he argued that traditional morality, rooted in concepts like selflessness and guilt, was a tool of control, born out of resentment. He advocated for a master morality, based on self-assertion, creativity, and the will to power, rejecting the constraints of imposed values. Alchemy, psychosocial growth parallels alchemical transformation. Just as base metals are refined into gold, morality is the refinement of the soul. Integrating our shadow aspects, selfishness, fear, anger, leads to greater wholeness and higher moral awareness. Mortality and fear. To exist is to know that existence will end. This awareness of mortality breeds existential suffering and motivates much of human behavior. Humans seek control over nature, resources, and each other to stave off the inevitability of death, even temporarily. Example: wars, ideologies, and technological advancements often stem from humanity's fear of mortality. The drive to create legacies, enforce beliefs, or conquer others reflects the desire to transcend death's finality. For Schopenhauer, this fear of death and the ceaseless striving of the will to live are the ultimate sources of human suffering. For Hobbes, the fear of death was the driving force behind the creation of laws and government structures designed to reduce the threat of violent death and ensure survival. For Nietzsche, mortality is not something to fear but a call to embrace life fully. He urged humanity to affirm life's transient nature and create meaning through acts of will, rejecting nihilism born from fear of death. Emotions and morality. Emotions evolved as adaptive mechanisms to enhance survival and reproduction. They serve as quick, automatic responses to environmental stimuli, helping organisms navigate complex social and physical challenges. Hence why emotions are not the cause of suffering but tools evolved to navigate existence. They are not the cause, just a layer that adds to conflict. Each serves a specific purpose. Fear alerts us to danger, triggering a fight or flight response to ensure survival. Example: fear evolved to help early humans avoid predators. When faced with a lion, fear triggers the fight or flight response, increasing heart rate and adrenaline, preparing the body to react quickly and improve chances of survival. Similarly, emotions like love promote bonding, ensuring parents care for their offspring, increasing the likelihood of survival for the next generation. Anger helps defend against threats and assert boundaries, maintaining personal safety and status. Example: hunter's tribe is attacked by another group. Filled with anger, the hunter stands his ground, channeling the energy into defending his tribe, securing resources, and maintaining their safety. Love fosters bonds and cooperation, crucial for raising offspring and forming alliances. Example: mother holds her newborn baby for the first time. Overwhelmed by a deep emotional connection, she becomes intensely protective, ensuring the baby's survival by staying close, feeding it, and responding to its cries. Sadness signals the need for support or reflection, strengthening social bonds and helping process loss. Example: a member of a group loses their partner to illness. Overcome with sadness, they withdraw temporarily, but their visible grief fosters empathy from others in the group, deepening social connections and ensuring they receive support in their time of need. Happiness encourages behaviors that promote survival and reproduction, such as forming relationships or seeking resources. Example: after successfully hunting and sharing the food, the tribe gathers around a fire. The hunter feels happiness as others laugh and bond, reinforcing the importance of cooperation and strengthening social ties within the group. However, emotions can fuel conflict when misaligned with reality. For example, fear of mortality often drives oppressive systems or wars. Revenge is an emotion-driven response that often surfaces when a person perceives injustice or harm. It is not merely a desire for retaliation but a complex emotional reaction to a perceived wrong that demands resolution. This is a crucial point when considering how morality evolves. Emotions, particularly those tied to anger and betrayal, often propel individuals toward acts of revenge, which can either maintain or disrupt societal harmony. In early human societies, the act of revenge was not only a personal choice but a social tool, designed to restore balance or correct perceived wrongs. In small tribes, where trust and cooperation were essential for survival, personal grievances could lead to serious consequences if left unchecked. Thus, early moral systems might have sanctioned acts of revenge as a way to maintain social order. An eye for an eye was as much about preserving group cohesion as it was about the individual's desire for retribution. However, as societies grew and moral codes became more structured, revenge was seen less as a personal duty and more as a threat to collective stability. The evolving sense of morality began to prioritize justice over personal vengeance. This shift reflects the growing complexity of human societies, where long-term cooperation, forgiveness, and justice became central to maintaining social harmony. Legal systems, for example, emerged not only to punish wrongdoers but to ensure that revenge did not spiral into chaos. Why, then, do we still feel the pull of revenge today? It speaks to the survival mechanisms built into our emotional landscape. Anger in response to an injustice has a primal function. It signals that something important has been violated, motivating action. Yet, in modern contexts, these feelings often lead to disproportionate reactions that hinder the resolution of conflict. In your story, you might explore revenge as a character's response to perceived betrayal or harm, reflecting the moral tensions that arise when emotions like anger clash with societal expectations of forgiveness and justice. For instance, a character who seeks revenge may initially be justified by their emotional state but, over time, might realize that their pursuit only leads to deeper moral disillusionment and societal fracture, demonstrating how emotions, when left unchecked, can shape and distort moral outcomes. The role of revenge thus serves as a moral paradox. While it may have once been a tool for maintaining balance in small groups, it now risks escalating conflict rather than resolving it. This evolution of moral thought highlights how emotional impulses can influence, and at times even distort, our ideas of right and wrong. How and why emotions drive conflict. Internet conflict. Emotions are powerful forces that shape our thoughts, behaviors, and sense of self. Internal conflict arises when emotional needs, desires, or values clash within an individual. Competing emotions. People often experience emotional contradictions. For instance, they may feel love and resentment toward the same person or situation. These competing emotions create inner turmoil as the individual struggles to reconcile their feelings. Why? Emotions evolve to signal different needs or priorities, but in complex situations, they may pull in opposing directions, creating psychological strain. Example: a person stays in a toxic relationship because they love their partner but also feel hurt and undervalued, leading to self-doubt and inner conflict. Unmet emotional needs. When emotions like sadness, fear, or anger aren't acknowledged or addressed, they can manifest as frustration, anxiety, or even self-criticism. Why? Emotions are adaptive signals prompting action, and ignoring them disrupts internal harmony. Example: a grieving individual suppresses their sadness to appear strong, but over time, this unprocessed emotion leads to burnout or irrational outbursts. Moral or identity struggles. When actions or circumstances conflict with deeply held beliefs or a person's sense of identity, emotional distress emerges. Why? Humans evolved to align behavior with internalized values to maintain social harmony and personal integrity. When this alignment is disrupted, guilt or shame arises. Example: a person who values honesty feels immense guilt after lying to protect someone, struggling with the moral compromise they've made. Interpersonal conflict. Emotions often drive misunderstandings, power struggles, and misaligned goals between individuals. Fear and mistrust. Fear skews perception, making people assume hostility or betrayal even when none exists. This leads to defensive or confrontational behavior, escalating tension. Why? Fear evolved to protect against danger, but in social contexts, it often misfires, interpreting neutral situations as threatening. Example: a friend perceives another's busy schedule as deliberate neglect, leading to resentment and a confrontation that damages their bond. Anger and retaliation. Anger arises when people feel wronged or disrespected, pushing them toward defensive or aggressive actions. Why? Anger evolved to correct perceived injustices, but in modern settings, it often leads to impulsive reactions rather than constructive solutions. Example: a partner snaps during an argument, turning a small disagreement into a heated exchange, further alienating them from their loved one. Envy and competition. Envy fosters resentment and conflict when individuals perceive others as threats to their resources, status, or self-esteem. Why? Envy evolved to motivate resource acquisition and status competition, but in social contexts, it creates unnecessary rivalries. Example: a coworker's promotion triggers jealousy in another, who begins sabotaging projects to undermine their success. By creating friction between desires, beliefs, and expectations, emotions not only fuel internal struggles but also act as catalysts for interpersonal discord. Understanding their evolutionary purpose helps us see their dual role as both adaptive and disruptive forces. Stress and the value of life. Why do we care about suffering beyond just feeling bad? Suffering is not merely an unpleasant experience, it holds a profound significance rooted in survival, growth, and purpose. It compels us to confront challenges, adapt, and seek meaning in life's hardships. The evolutionary why. Suffering is a mechanism for growth. Suffering serves as an adaptive mechanism, forcing us to address vulnerabilities and driving problem-solving, innovation, and resilience. Emotional learning. Negative emotions, such as regret or sadness, teach us to avoid harmful actions and improve future outcomes. Social survival. Caring about suffering, our own and others, promotes empathy, cooperation, and mutual aid, which enhance survival rates. Example: a person who burns their hand on a hot stove learns to avoid touching it again. This pain prevents further injury. Example: a person grieving the loss of a loved one may use their pain to form stronger bonds with others, fostering community. The search for meaning, abstract thinking and existential reflection. Humans' ability to think abstractly allows us to connect events, build narratives, and ask, why, deepening our experience of suffering but also providing the tools to endure and find purpose. Viktor Frankl and the Will to Meaning. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, argued that the primary drive in human life is the will to meaning. He observed, even in the horrors of concentration camps, that those who could find meaning in their suffering, whether through love, faith, or responsibility, were more likely to endure it. Suffering is a byproduct of advanced cognition. Humans' ability to think abstractly and imagine different scenarios creates unique forms of suffering. Anticipation of pain. Unlike other animals, humans can anticipate suffering, such as worrying about future dangers. This ability helps us prepare and avoid harm, even if it causes anxiety. Example: fear of starvation led early humans to plan for winter, ensuring long-term survival. Existential suffering. Advanced cognition allows humans to reflect on mortality and the meaning of life, creating existential suffering. While painful, this has driven the development of philosophy, religion, and art, which strengthen cultural bonds and provide psychological resilience. Nietzsche and the why. Friedrich Nietzsche similarly noted, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Finding purpose transforms suffering into a stepping stone for growth, allowing individuals to endure hardships and continue forward. Suffering is a driver of adaptation and learning, encouraging problem solving. Suffering often drives individuals to innovate and adapt. When faced with challenges, humans develop tools, strategies, or technologies to reduce suffering and improve their quality of life. Example: hunger and the discomfort of food scarcity likely motivated early humans to invent farming and food storage methods. Why do we keep living if life is so painful? Biological imperatives. Survival instincts are hardwired into us. Our brains release dopamine and other chemicals that create moments of joy or satisfaction, even amid hardship, encouraging us to continue living. Hope and anticipation. Humans are future-oriented. The belief that suffering leads to something better or that relief is possible motivates persistence. Example: a struggling student perseveres through years of study, driven by the hope of a better life and personal achievement. A perfect example of thinking long-term, outside of instincts. Cultural and philosophical narratives. Religions, philosophies, and cultural stories frame suffering as part of a larger journey, encouraging endurance. Example: in many spiritual traditions, suffering is viewed as a test or purification process, leading to enlightenment or a better afterlife. The Will to Meaning. Frankl's work highlights that meaning is essential for resilience. Suffering without purpose leads to despair, but when suffering is seen as part of a larger narrative, it becomes bearable. Resilience and growth. Suffering often transforms individuals, fostering strength, empathy, and a deeper appreciation for life's joys. Why is suffering bad? Why is stress bad? One thing to note is resistance to suffering in two ways. What makes suffering worse is when you suffer alone or when you without a why. First, how do we suffer? Why emotions are not the cause of suffering. While hatred undoubtedly plays a significant role in creating harm, I argue that it is not the root cause. Instead, emotions, including hatred, are symptoms of a deeper problem. Our disconnect from reality and our inability to connect with others and the world around us. Human nature. What is human nature? Human nature refers to the inherent qualities, behaviors, and traits that are characteristic of human beings across cultures and societies. These traits are shaped by both our biological instincts and psychological needs. Human nature encompasses a wide range of motivations, behaviors, emotions, and responses that are influenced by both our evolutionary history and social conditioning. At its core, human nature seeks to fulfill the basic needs for survival, connection, and self-worth, but the way we achieve those goals can vary greatly, sometimes leading to both positive and destructive outcomes. Human nature is shaped by biological instincts, basic survival mechanisms like the need for food, water, shelter, and safety. Psychological needs, our need for love, belonging, self-esteem, and ultimately, self-actualization, the realization of one's potential. Social influences, how our behaviors and thoughts are shaped by the cultures and environments we grow up in, the expectations placed upon us, and the relationships we have with others. The dark side of human nature. While human nature includes positive drives like empathy, love, and the desire for cooperation, it also contains darker, destructive tendencies. These darker aspects of human nature emerge when individuals feel threatened, powerless, rejected, or unloved. When basic needs like safety, esteem, and purpose are unmet, human beings may resort to aggression, manipulation, crime, and violence as ways of coping or achieving control. This dark side can lead to behaviors such as rape, murder, gang violence, abuse, and genocide. In this chapter, I will explore the dark side of human nature and how our need for control, power, identity, and certainty can lead to destructive behaviors such as suicide, rape, gang violence, abuse, hate crimes, government corruption, and more. These behaviors don't exist in isolation, they fuel cycles of destruction. Poverty fuels crime, crime fuels addiction, and systemic issues like slavery and genocide emerge from these patterns. To understand where these behaviors stem from, we will use Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a framework. However, while Maslow's model is useful, it doesn't fully explain deeper psychological forces like the need for control or power. Expanding it with additional context will allow us to better understand why people engage in destructive actions. Mapping negative behaviors to needs. Many harmful actions can be traced back to unmet needs. Robbery often stems from physiological needs, survival, but can also arise from a need for esteem, status. Murder can be linked to safety needs, self-preservation, or revenge. Infidelity may stem from a lack of love and belonging, emotional neglect. Hate crimes often arise when someone perceives their esteem or identity as being threatened. Suicide may result from an inability to reach self-actualization, a sense of purpose or fulfillment. The role of mental mechanisms. While needs drive behavior, mental mechanisms shape how people justify harmful actions. Dehumanization, for example, is not a motive, it is a psychological tool. People do not enslave, kill, or abuse others because they dehumanize them, rather, dehumanization allows them to commit these acts without guilt. This is seen in slavery, war crimes, and systemic discrimination, where groups are labeled as less than human to justify oppression. Expanding Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy explains many negative behaviors, but it does not fully account for control, power, autonomy, or self-efficacy, needs that shape human behavior just as much as food and shelter. When these needs go unmet, they can lead to destructive choices. The need for control and power. When people feel powerless, they may assert dominance over others, e.g., authoritarian rule, domestic abuse, slavery. The need for autonomy. When restricted, individuals may rebel, sometimes violently, against perceived oppression, e.g., gang involvement, political uprisings, self-destructive defiance. The need for self-efficacy. When people feel incapable, they may turn to destructive behaviors out of frustration, e.g., sabotage, addiction, self-victimization. Examples of unmet needs leading to harmful behaviors. The need for revenge. The need for revenge. When people feel wronged or powerless, they may seek revenge as a means of regaining control, asserting power, or reclaiming a sense of justice. Revenge allows them to feel that they can right a perceived wrong, often providing a temporary sense of closure or empowerment, especially when other needs like control or autonomy have been threatened. However, the pursuit of revenge can perpetuate cycles of harm and prevent true resolution, often leaving the individual emotionally stuck or trapped in conflict. If your physiological needs aren't met, you might steal. If your safety is threatened, you might lash out aggressively, even excessively. If you don't fit in with those around you, but gangsters welcome you, you may join them. If you feel incapable of reaching your goals, you may sabotage those who succeed. If your life feels meaningless, you might turn to drugs to escape. The same applies to our additional needs. If you feel you have no control over your life, e.g., due to strict parents, you may start to resent or even hate them. If you feel like nothing you do matters, you might take extreme actions to force significance. If you don't feel competent, you may choose to give up and stop trying altogether. This expanded model helps us understand how negative behaviors emerge, not as random evils, but as responses to unmet needs. When physiological, psychological, and power-related needs remain unfulfilled, individuals may seek to fill those gaps through destructive means. Self-actualization, fulfillment and purpose. Positive outcome, finds meaningful work or passion. Mentors others, creates art or innovation, seeks wisdom. Negative outcome, falls into addiction, self-destructive behavior, nihilism, or suicide due to lack of purpose. Self-sabotage, withdrawal from opportunities. Esteem, mental stability, status, power, competence. Positive outcome, gains confidence through skill building. Earns respect by contributing to society, helping others grow. Mental stability, processes emotions well, maintains a balanced state of mind, handles stress effectively, which fosters rational decisions and healthy relationships. Negative outcome, seeks power through rape, abuse, oppression, and manipulation. Tears others down to feel superior, engages in criminal activities to gain status. Corruption, craving validation and status leads to exploitation, bullying, greed, and classism, e.g., corporate exploitation, political manipulation, abuse. Mental instability, struggles to manage stress, resorts to maladaptive coping strategies like aggression, avoidance, substance abuse. More susceptible to irrational thoughts, self-victimization, and delusions that distort reality. Consequences: addiction, aggression, self-sabotage, defensiveness, envy, resentment, isolation, and internalized inferiority. Love and belonging, social connection. Positive outcome, forms healthy friendships and romantic relationships. Contributes to a community, feels connected. Healthy social identity, belonging without extremism. Negative outcome, infidelity, joining gangs or cults for belonging. Overdependency on toxic relationships, engaging in hate crimes to protect the in-group. Societal pressures, e.g., Nazi Germany, gang violence lead people to ignore justice or adopt harmful beliefs. Social media fuels extremism, where individuals justify violence against outsiders. Safety, certainty, security and stability. Positive outcome, saves money, secures shelter and safety. Diffuses conflicts and maintains a sense of personal and social stability. Certainty and mental stability. Certainty helps mitigate anxiety and fear, while mental stability enhances coping strategies, enabling healthier decisions in unstable environments. Negative outcome. Governments and groups justify oppression for security or order, e.g., dictatorship, mass surveillance, authoritarianism. Fear of chaos leads to acceptance of loss of freedom, e.g., violence, conspiracies, extremism. Certainty. Lack of certainty causes anxiety, fear, desperation. Leads to aggression, manipulation, or withdrawal. Consequences: addiction, violence, self-destructive behavior, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, paranoia. Individuals may seek control through unhealthy means, e.g., authoritarianism, narcissism, power-driven behaviors. Physiological needs, basic survival. Positive outcome, works to secure food, shelter, and self-sufficiency through legal and ethical means. Negative outcome, resorting to theft, manipulation, and addictive behaviors to fulfill the pleasure-pain principle, e.g., addiction. Behavioral consequences, engaging in illegal or harmful activities to fulfill immediate survival needs or desires.